Tonight, inshallah, we are going to focus on sources of trouble in the family. Unless you know where things come from, you cannot face them. So we need to define where does trouble come from inside the family. I defined several issues that influence and affect the family relationship as follows. The first one is the lack of Islam. By the lack of Islam, I mean either that the family has nothing to do with Islam and that's why they don't have the guidance to go by, or the lack of connection with Islam, which means they are not practicing and they don't have the knowledge. So either way, absence of Islam inside the family means a lot of trouble. Let's take some examples. If the husband is too religious and the wife is not as religious, or her definition of religiosity is different, then that could be a source of trouble in the family. So his definition of Islam for him is your hijab. That's his definition of Islam. Your definition of Islam is looking up to the model of the Prophet ﷺ with his wives. And he's not there. That could be a good source of trouble in the family. Okay. Likewise, if Islam for the sister is nothing more than hijab, again, that could be a huge source of trouble in the family, because for the husband, he is looking also for some of his own models. So absence of Islam means lack of definitive expectations, lack of joint vision, lack of joint mutually acceptable expectations on either side or both sides. Okay? So Islamic marriage means that we should have minimum set of Islamicity in the relationship. Because in the marriage contract, we both agree that I want to marry you based on the Quran and the Sunnah. That's a foundation. And I accept to marry you based on the Quran and the Sunnah, right? So if that basis is absent, then where is the foundation? It is like trying to build a building, a structure, on no foundation. Or a foundation that is not defined. What constitutes a foundation? Where is our reference? What do we go to when we have disagreements? So Islam is a very important cement, if you will, of the relationship in terms of being foundation, in terms of being a source of guidance, a source for judgment, a source of developing joint view into the future, and a source for direction. Where are we heading? Where do we want to go? Okay? Now, let us assume that Islam is there covering all of these issues. It is both a good foundation, a strong foundation, a good cement and cohesion for the relationship, good guidance, and good direction. Now, what else could really trouble the family? Assuming that Islam covers all of those issues, what else could be a source of trouble in the family? Lack of education. We talk a lot about Islam, but we never read the Quran. If I don't learn the map, how can I use the map for direction? So the Prophet ﷺ says, البيت الذي يقرأ فيه القرآن يكثر خيره ويقل شره. The house in which the Quran is recited, read, learned on regular basis, it increases in goodness and decreases in evil and wickedness. Then he says the opposite. والبيت الذي لا يقرأ فيه القرآن يكثر شره ويقل خيره. the house in which the Quran is not recited, it increases in wickedness and decreases in goodness and righteousness. What is the Prophet ﷺ is talking about? He is not talking about the house means the wall. He is talking about the household. He is talking about you and your family. He's talking about me and my family. So what is the point about increasing wickedness and increasing righteousness, or the opposite? We know from the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that every soul has two sources of ready inclinations. Two sources of ready-made inclinations inside every soul. Man, woman, young, old, everybody. What are those inclinations? The Quran says, فَأَلْهَمَهَا, Allah inspired it, the soul, with the inclination towards wickedness and or righteousness. So everyone has these two sides. Everyone has the inclination to act like a devil or to act like an angel. It is difficult to sustain yourself as an angel for a long time. It is difficult because we're not made to be angels, right? But it is difficult also to be a devil all the time, because you will be always punished. The society will punish you. Circumstances will punish you. The environment will punish you. So we end up not liking ourselves as is by trying to become either 100% angels, and we get depression if we don't reach there, or to get all of our desires met the way we like it, and we end up being like devils, but we're never devils. So this is a recognition that we need to have, that every spouse I could have had would be the same thing. Part angel, part devil. Now, what do I deal with this? I need to look into myself for guidance. How much can I control of my own devilish inclinations before I ask my partner to do the same? This is one thing we need to recognize. The other is, what do I inspire my spouse to be and to do? Do I trigger his negative instincts, or do I trigger and instigate his positive instincts, the righteous side of him or her? So whatever you decide you want your life mission to be in the marriage will materialize. If you want to continue to focus on what is positive in him or her and continue to trigger, inspire, encourage, and reward, this will grow. Whatever you try to punish, you will be met with resistance, you will be met with resentment, and everybody will turn defensive, and you will end up in a competition, not a cooperation. So the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith is saying, to increase righteousness, use the Quran to help you. Because no matter how sophisticated you may be, your words are never gonna match the words of Allah. The influence of what you want to say will never match the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not in its power, not in its influence. Right? So what we need to do is what the Prophet ﷺ says. The house in which the Quran is recited, studied, absorbed, and practiced increases in righteousness and goodness, and decreases in evil and wickedness. If there is something in the hadith that would make our life completely different, it is our understanding of what the hadith is really telling us. And it's telling us, despite the fact that you have this fluctuating self, desires, needs, wants, pressure, stress, worries, fears, all of the above, you still have a high degree of control over yourself. If you want to exercise it, it's yours. If you want to succumb to your feelings, it's also yours. Because our inspiration in marriage is mutual, I try to inspire what's best in you. You try to inspire what's best in me. If you reward my good deeds, I will increase them, right? If you reward my wickedness, I will increase them. So whatever you trigger in me, that you will find. So when we say, whenever I talk to him, even though I talk to him nicely, and everything is quiet, and we have a very good relationship, and the days we're not nervous, we're not stressed, but once I open this one subject about his mother, he turns blue. Then you need to have known that opening this issue will change everything, right? So one of the things that we bring trouble with in our own family, with our own hands, is bypassing our own knowledge. So in terms of education, you may have the information, but bypassing this information takes you to trouble. It is like a child who has learned early on that 2 + 2 = 4. But it gets to his head that in this specific problem, he wants 2 + 2 to equal 5. That's what's coming to his head. It's not going to work. He's going to lose. So we have to be careful not to bypass our own knowledge, either of facts or guidance, nor our knowledge of each other. What are the triggers that we know about each other? I know when I talk about your mom's visit and she stayed 2 months instead of 1 month, right? You get angry, right? I should be wise enough not to reopen the same wound again and again and again. Okay? Likewise, if it is not your mother, one day you embarrassed me with my guests, right? The salt was too much in the food. I'm just giving an example. I got embarrassed. I had to buy food. It cost me a lot of money on the same day. Finished. It's gone. I should be mature enough. If my guests are men and mature, they also should be mature enough to laugh it off. It happens. It happens. You yourself could put more salt on your own food than you intended. So this is not a war that you deliberately calculated too much salt in the food to embarrass me. It's inadvertent. So we have to also have the maturity level so that not every trigger will trigger our negative reaction. So we have to pass certain things. So part of our education is guidance and facts. Part of our education is understanding the circumstances. Part of it is understanding the triggers in the relationship. Positive triggers, negative triggers. Part of our education is to learn what are the rewards that we like from each other. Okay. Of course, the word education is very much related to accumulating knowledge and information. So I don't talk about this because it's known, but I'm talking about elements that influence our reaction or actions as people of knowledge or lack thereof. The lack of vision, either it comes in the form of, oh, we love each other, let's get married, you have to talk to my dad, I talk to your dad, and your dad says these are the conditions. I say, fine, whatever conditions, my uncle, I love your daughter, I want to do everything. So instead of coming to the marriage with a view forward to know what are my basic responsibilities, I am coming to the marriage emotionally. I am not entering this relationship because of anything. And this is more of a problem with young sisters than it is with young men. But it is a problem with both, especially the generations that are raised here, because people who are raised in the Western society in general are unfortunately plagued with certain characteristics that are very difficult to take out, are very difficult to change. One of the things that they grow up with, and those of you who grew up here can correct me if my understanding is incorrect, is the fact that I grow up being told that life either revolves around me or should revolve around me. And nobody should violate my wants. I'm not talking about my needs. I'm talking about my wants, which in essence turns a person into his or her own God. Everything has to be 100% or 150% custom tailored to my liking. So even terminologies I'm not used to, they become aggravating factors in life. Even the slightest change that requires me to change a little bit of my habits, it's difficult. And anything I'm not used to is difficult to change or difficult to adapt myself to. That is part of the plagues of being grown in a society that overvalues personal ego than it values themselves. Raising children by telling them, if you like it, do it. If you don't like it, don't do it, is false. It is appeasing to the child. You may gain the child's love, but you are making the child lose himself or herself, because he is not gonna ever be in full control of everything in his life. So that is one factor. The other opposite factor is that people who are raised overseas, they tend to cover most things by sweet talk. And they forget that real change is needed, especially when somebody is in pain. So they end up doing awful things to their spouses and or their children, and they say, معلش, خلاص, it's finished, it's done. And that frustrates people who are raised here, who want to see things done in a systematic way because they are used to an organized mindset. They are not used to haphazard and random, unexpected, unpredictable lifestyle. Okay? So people who grew up in the East have difficulty being predictable because they do not live by a system. Not Islam, not anything else. And I'm talking in general, not specific. So there are exceptions, of course, people who recognize this fact and they develop habits that are consistent with what's expected and develop a system to live by. They are more pleasant than people who don't. But these are parts of the reason of conflict inside the family. Okay? So the vision that is based on organization, systematic expectations, mutual view, helps both sides to develop joint vision for the family. Okay? So they have joint policy for raising the kids. They actually have joint views of each child. They say, my son, Ahmed, is good at this, he is poor with that, he has some attitudes, and this is what we need to work on, right? Then the mother says, no, he is not what you think. You don't live with him. I know him better. He is this and this and this. This lack of joint view will eventually result in conflicting policies as to how to deal with Ahmed or Muhammad or Zainab or anybody. So we need to look what is joint in our view. Ego is a big problem. Ego is a source of big problems in the family. When people feel offended for the slightest remark or critique, that becomes a big problem. And it's mostly prevalent with people who lack education, who lack development, who lack social skills, who lack proper attitudes. So then ego takes over. What is ego? Ego is the sense of self. When the ego is inflated, I think you should never talk to me like this. Well, but we were fine when we were engaged. What happened? No, I am the husband, you are the wife. Or you cannot talk to me like this because you know I did this and this and this and this for you. So you should be submitting to me. You should become like a slave. You should never review or recount what I say. Just take it for what it is. That attitude of inflated ego causes a lot of trouble inside the family. External interferences. And I'm not saying that this is only possible by in-laws, but in-laws, unfortunately, they play a very bad role in many cases in turning things upside down. But let us ask that question. Who brings the in-laws between two people who started off loving each other? Who would bring them? It is one of the two. Either I complain to my family or you complain to your family. Either I complain to your family or you complain to my family. Once invited, don't ask how they handle the situation. They will handle it the way they see fit. They may agree with your views. They may agree with your spouse's views. They may disagree with both of you. They may want to shape you on their own patterns and experience. So once you invite outside interference, you need to know what you're getting yourself into. So outside interference is not pleasant all the time. So when you are in severe pain in your relationship, don't think that crying over your mom's shoulder is the best thing to do. It may be crying on your spouse's shoulder is the best thing to do, because after a period of time, he knows you and you know him more than your mom. So what is she going to do? She's going to ask you questions to figure, what do you think he is? What do you think he likes? Then she will charter your path into whatever she likes or whatever she thinks is the way out of a problem. So inviting outside interference is also a good cause for lots of trouble in the family. How do we then use the help of families and otherwise friends or anybody when we have difficulty communicating? The first issue is to determine and agree on what the problem is. Because if you go each to somebody else to define what the issues are, you are losing exactly the person you want to win over the most. So before you go out, you can't agree to a solution, but at least agree to what the problem is. And then before you complain to someone, seek information and knowledge that may help you address the problem on your own. Let us say we're married, we have a problem communicating with each other. So, okay, let's agree that we have a problem in communication. I don't listen to you enough, or I don't listen to you carefully, or I talk to you at inopportune times, or I catch you always doing what is wrong. I never pay attention to what is right. Let us define the problem first. So let us say the problem is communication. Before I seek somebody's counsel, I need to learn communication skills. Because maybe if I learn and practice communication skills, I can work with you to resolve the communication issues. Maybe I can improve my listening skills. Maybe I can improve the way I listen to you. Maybe I can improve how you listen to me. Maybe I start talking to you in a language that is easier for you to understand. So there is a lot to learn of the facts and the skills that I need to improve my own situation. Then when I fail and or you fail in addressing the communication, despite the communication seminars we had, despite all the books we have read, then we need to go to somebody who could counsel us on what issues? On communication. So we're not going to open the can of worms, right? On every issue, because we have a problem in communication. Otherwise, we're fine. We agree on a vision. We agree we both have to be Muslims. We agree to many things, but this is an issue. I didn't learn communication as a young man. What's the problem? I can learn it now, no problem. But if I refuse to learn it, or you refuse to learn it, or we refuse to practice it, then we'll never improve. Going to someone is not going to change my will. It may change my position, but my will continue to be mine. I have to ultimately decide if I want to solve the problem or not. And this is summarized to us in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, If you start to see signs of concern that causes concern in terms of the relationship between the husband and the wife, then send a judge from his side of the family and a judge from her side of the family. And I will talk about this just in a minute. And let them seek to help them reconcile their differences. Then Allah says, إِن يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا. If both sides want to reform themselves, then Allah will mend fences and reconcile between the two of them. Let us talk about this ayah a bit. Why does the Quran say one of his family and one of her family? It is because families are expected to want your best interest no matter what. Families are expected to know you as a person. So your parents know you well. If one of them is sought for help, he or she is supposed to help you recover from any problem that you get yourself into. They also have the leverage of being parents. For example, they can tell you, please change your way. We've been telling you this for years. You didn't change, that's what you're facing. So they have the leverage to talk with moral authority over you rather than anyone else. Okay? So there are definite benefits of using family help, except if the family itself is a trouble source, or if the family itself do not know how to solve their own issues. They are also in a lot of trouble. They will bring their trouble into your life. Why did the Quran say a member of his family and a member of her family? It is because of the reasons I mentioned in the beginning. That they are more likely to protect your privacy. They are more likely to understand you. They are more likely to give you ideas out of love and care. Okay? They are more likely to want you to succeed in your marriage. Unlike a neutral person who doesn't care and you don't know where they are coming from, what their paradigm of thought is. Especially many of us families here, we go to non-Muslim counselors. And their personal experience and knowledge in life influences how they give you a good judgment. So their good judgment is based on their own paradigm. I'm not saying don't use them, but there is a limitation on how much you can gain from these people. But you can gain a lot of knowledge on tricks and skills and attitudes and approaches from them. But to make a value judgment, you will need somebody who shares your values so that he would understand, why is this giving you pain? Why is this issue important in your head? He would not dismiss your feeling because they come from a different background. Okay? So the Quran says use a family member from this side, a family member from that side, and then Muslim scholars would read this ayah and say, if the judges want to reconcile, the ayah says, إِن يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا, if they want to mend fences, right? No, the ayah is saying, if they want to reform. If they want to reform, everybody to reform their way according to the expectation of the other side, right? Then eventually reconciliation will happen. Some Muslim scholars, in fact it is a majority, who say if the judges want to reconcile, Allah will reconcile between the two. I don't think this is true. The judges can want anything they want, but the want of the husband and the wife is the want that is referred to in the ayah, as far as I'm concerned. So external interference could be friends, not families. You have your own circle of friends, he has his own circle of friends. They may be the same, but the husbands that he is connected with are different from the wives you are connected with. So they feed you with certain ideas and you think they are your friends, they are giving you guidance, right? But they don't understand what's acceptable to your wife or your husband, right? And the opposite also happens. So those close friends do bring some kind of difficulty in the marriage as well, unless they hear both sides. And if they hear both sides, you and your husband have lost already your privacy. The only way to protect your privacy is to keep your private issues private. Don't blame anyone for using what you say. In any way, don't blame them. Because what is most amazing is we discover, unfortunately, shocking surprises with people who abuse what we talk to them in confidence privately. Divergent desires. We know in the Quran the examples of Nuh and his wife, Lut and his wife, right? We also know the example of Asya and her husband, Pharaoh, right? We know the example of Maryam, alayhi salam, okay? The Quran gives us those examples. Likewise, the example of Ibrahim and his father, Nuh and his son, right? To show us that those prophets have gone through similar experiences like yours. Don't get desperate. Follow their footsteps. Unfortunately, in following these prophets' footsteps, we either misread what their experience were, or we would misunderstand what the experience is about and what lessons to draw. So some people read the story of Prophet Nuh, and their conclusion and lesson is, if Nuh couldn't straighten up his own son, and he's a prophet, why should I waste time trying to do it with my son? That is not even a lesson in Nuh's story. It's not about Nuh succeeding or failing. It is about Allah has given that child, that son of Nuh, a lot of opportunities. And Nuh, the lesson is, he never gave up on his son. We know this from the Quran itself. When the ship was about to float in the water, and the flood was taking over the land, the mountains, and the hills, and everything, Nuh was still talking to his son, renewing his invitation. يا بني اركب معنا ولا تكن مع الكافرين. Come, ride with us. Don't go with the kafirin. So what is the lesson? The lesson is Nuh never gave up. What is the other lesson? The other lesson, how long did it take Nuh? Nuh lived about 1,000 years, right? And he spent all his life guiding his son. So if that were his baby child, this guy might have been 700 years old. Right? None of us will get ever close. Did Nuh give up? No, not after 700 years. Let us say he was younger than that, 300 years, right? But still, he was his son, and he kept insisting to show him the way and to entice him and try to persuade him to change his position. So that's the lesson, okay? That is the lesson. Then some would draw lessons wrongly from the story of Ibrahim. Ibrahim, his father, was idol worshipper, and he was presumably an idol maker himself, right? And as he invited his father refused. Then Ibrahim ends up saying, I will go my way and I will leave you wherever you are and I will pray for you. So some young men in particular, or young zealot women who just dress hijab young and they want to be religious, they want to leave their family as Ibrahim left his family. But Ibrahim didn't leave because it was difficult. Ibrahim didn't leave because he was fed up or frustrated or because his father didn't accept him. No. Ibrahim was threatened for his life. Then and only then he went his way. After he was threatened, his father told him, لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهِ لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ. If you do not stop talking to me about this God of yours, I am going to stone you to death. So Ibrahim didn't live because of frustration, but because he was threatened in his safety and in his life. But the lesson many people draw is, I go, I am religious, I am a believer, they are kafirin, they are wrong, they will never see things my way. So I go out of the family and not put any effort because it's an easy way out for me, not because I was threatened or anything like this. I know that some threats are more difficult than others. I attended a conference of new Muslim sisters about 27, 28 years ago in Chicago. And there were about 200-300 sisters in the room. And they wanted me to talk to them about something, and I thought that it was better for me to listen to their experience and for them to share their own experience with each other. So I turned the table and they talked and I listened. And what I learned was really amazing. I really discovered things that I've never known before. That some of them got their families to burn their own hijab clothes, all of it, overnight. One of them said that my mom was about to kill me twice. You want to cover your hair? I'm going to burn it for you. Burn it. And that she did. And when her daughter was asleep, imagine setting your daughter's hair on fire and she is asleep in her bed. So there were horror stories of what parents have done to their daughters who accepted Islam despite their refusal. And the struggle they go through to convince their families to have at least a peaceful relationship. So if any of you is a new Muslim or a convert and you have a peaceful relationship with your family, which you should, never take it for granted. Never take it for granted. It's a God-given gift. Nurture it, reward them for it, and enjoy it while you have it. Because it's very difficult to convince any parent that his or her child had changed their faith without them knowing about it, and they come to be told that or discovered. Like one mother took the prayer rug from the daughter's room, and she unfortunately just messed it up with a lot of najas from the bathroom. And she set it on its place, back, as if it is clean. And the smell was very bad in the room, and the daughter had to discover what had happened. And when this comes from your mother, it makes you feel the sense of security, the sense of belonging, the sense of safety, which are basics for life. So sometimes we need to appreciate what we get from our families. Divergent desires is when a person wants to shape the family life their way all the way, or at least good portions of it. So I want to control certain huge aspects of family life. I want to say when guests come, when guests do not come. What children are going to learn, what children are not going to learn. What movies we're going to watch, what movies we're never going to watch. Which masjid to go to, which masjid we'll never go to. When I become the guard in the prison, I end up delivering my spouse to the desirable freedom that everybody wants. She would want out, or he would want out. Okay? When I want to control all the food types, all how the food is cooked, the AC, the heat, everything in the house, then I would rather live by myself. Because that's the only way you can have 100% control. Many people, unfortunately, they marry and they do not have any hint as to how much change they will have to do in their life to adjust to this new experience. Having to live with someone you don't know. Having to adjust your habits. what you got used to of things that you regard as good in your views, he may have completely different views. His experience is absolutely different. So, not knowing that I need to do a lot of adjustment and keeping to hold on to your views, your experience. This is how mom cooked it. This is how mom did it. This is how dad was. Then you want to shape him according to your liking. It will not be easy. And it will cause a lot of trouble. So diversion desires. Okay? I want it this way. You want it that way. Then we are not going to mesh together. So we have to adjust our desires to each other's expectations. Unmet childhood needs. When a person grows up in a family, in a community, in a society, in a class, in a group, in a lifestyle that is different from yours, there will be a lot more adjustment than normal marriage between two people from the same village, from the same family, or so on and so forth. So unmet needs play a great deal of role in the marital life. And this is why I mentioned before, those sisters who treat their husbands as if they were their children, they win them more than trying anything else. Because every one of us grows up with some unmet needs. So when you become the source of meeting my childhood needs that I have never met, right? You become the jewel of my life. I trust you, I rely on you, I label you as a loving wife, and this, you will be my queen, okay? But if you attack my mom, or discount her ways, or criticize what she does, or how she talks, and she used to be the source of my peace, my safety, and everything else, you are building a barrier and a wall between me and you. No matter how much I believe what you're saying. And I could agree with you, my mom is not an angel. But at the same time, she was the one that met much of my needs. Okay? On the other hand, there are people who grew up in abusive environments. Whether it is verbal abuse, or it is physical abuse, whether it is neglect or abandonment. In those circumstances, never believe that this person is going to be normal on his or her own. They will need support and help to stand on their own 2 feet. Likewise, people who grew up enjoying their childhood habits, and they never outgrow their childhood habits because it pays off. They keep doing and behaving and acting and thinking like children. So every other day there is a tantrum at home. Every other day, because tantrum paid off. He or she got their way via a tantrum. That's how they got things done as children. So they use adult tantrums. What are adult tantrums? Adult tantrums are screaming, yelling, shouting, cursing. All of what you hear of verbal abuse is about adult acting like children. How do you deal with this? You cannot grow a person in a pressure cooker, because changing habits is difficult and old habits die hard. We all know that. So what you need to do is to determine which are the easiest habit that you want to target for change. And to craft a plan, how could I define this with him that he would accept that this really is a real bad habit? Because acknowledgement is the first step for change. To acknowledge that I am always angry, to acknowledge that I'm always abusive, that I'm always impulsive, that I'm always throwing tantrums at you, I'm always blaming you, to acknowledge it is a good step forward towards treating this kind of habit. Okay? Another good way is for each one of you to make a list of my own bad habits. or we've been married for 2 years now, or 3 or 4 or 5, and we've had some experience. Some days we're up, some days we're down. Let us have a refreshing review of where did we succeed, where did we please each other, and where did we fail to do that. So let us acknowledge our own shortcomings. Everyone has shortcomings. I'm not an angel, you're not an angel. But I'm not going to use the time to point fingers at you. I'm going to use the time to point finger at myself. I know my own shortcomings, right? So if I acknowledge my list, you acknowledge your list, there is a good likelihood that we can cooperate to improve. So I devise then a plan as to what do I want to do to change habit number 1. Then 3 steps. And what do I want from you to help me change the same habit? You give me 3, 4 issues that you could help with, and I ask for 2 more. Then we have 7 tactics to change 1 habit with 1 person. You see how difficult and time consuming it will be? But this is the only way to improve habits on both sides. Okay? So unmet needs from childhood forward can become a very serious cause. So some people grow up as adults, but they have what you call insecurity complex, right? They are difficult to trust others. Why? Because of upbringing. Certain needs of security in their life have not been met. They grow up having difficulty trusting others. Okay? So if you happen to marry to someone like this, then you need to devise a plan to give him assurance, much more than normal, and to give him the sense of, and this can happen by you becoming more transparent. I am going to visit my friend so-and-so. I will be there for a couple of hours. I will give you a call when I arrive so that you know that I arrived safely. And I will give you a call before I leave to know when to expect me to come. If I am going to be late, I will let you know. Transparency and openness will help calm the anxiety level that shoots into insecurity and restlessness. So we need to know what ways do I have in my toolbox to use and how to use them to change a difficult situation or to deal with difficult personalities. Dissatisfaction. People can be dissatisfied for a long time before they talk, especially in the beginning of marriage. People are shy, people don't want to talk, it is difficult, so they just think that this is the way it is. But my urge to everyone is, if your daughter got married, your son got married, if they are not satisfied from the beginning with the other person, because of whatever reason, encourage them to talk about it. Don't encourage them to say, be patient, things will evolve. No, things may devolve and not evolve. So from the outset, people have to address dissatisfactions from the day that they get married, okay? Because otherwise, things can go very wrong, and when you discover you are already with 2, 3 children, right? Then we get into the prison, which we said we become hostage of our own ideas. I'm just staying because of the kids. That's a hostage situation. That's a hostage situation. That's not marriage. So we need to be realistic about how much energy do I have to live with dissatisfaction, and for how long? How long do I take abuse, right? How long do I use the word patience as a cover for my failure to open and address issues? So sometimes we deceive ourselves by using the right word in the wrong circumstances. So dissatisfaction is also a huge source of trouble in the family. Negative upbringing, as I mentioned before, when you find your husband or your wife from day one having very harsh attitude, don't overlook it. Don't tolerate it. Address it. Address it because it may be a habit. Some people say, the way I grew up, if it was good for me, it is good for my children. This is the way my dad deals with my mom when she does ABC. I have to use his tools. But my wife is not my mom. And she will not necessarily accept, and I don't want to force her to accept my dad's habits. And who told you that it was working? Maybe your mom was too patient in her own generation, right? But don't ask your wife to be like the generation of your mom. So we have to be careful not to draw a broad brush over everything and deal with it from my personal experience as the perfect experience. Your experience is not necessarily a perfect experience. Some parents abuse their children verbally and physically, and they think because this is how they grew up that it should work with their children. And when it doesn't work, they don't change it, they increase it. And many families in this community have lost their children to foster care service because of abuse, whether it is verbal or otherwise physical. So negative upbringing. Negative upbringing also includes the fact that some people grow up with negative ideas. Like young boys are told that women are this and this, so when you get married, you better watch for this, you better watch for this. Negative ideas about men-women relationship or the makeup of a man and a woman. Okay? So they grow up, if they are girls, they are very scared and afraid to get married. And if they are boys, they are very aggressive with their wives from day one because they want to prove that they are men as they are told by their family. So negative upbringing comes in a huge package of things. It's either ideas, attitudes, perceptions, or otherwise beliefs. Some ideas turn into a belief system with which people live. It could be attitudes, and we'll talk about those in the next screen. Children could be a huge source of fights in the family, especially if your theory about raising children is absolutely different from his theory. You're starting off from a different perspective, he is starting off from a different perspective. That brings clashes very quickly. And it affects both sides. It affects the children, the two parents, and everybody else in the family. So children could also be a cause of trouble, especially if the children, and when the children turn into teenagers, right? And the wife is too patient for 10, 12 years. Now she starts to vent with her kids, right? So she's talking to her daughter. So her daughter develops negative attitude towards her father, right? Or maybe towards her mother, because she sees her mother as wrong. Then she herself will have trouble adjusting her life in her own marriage, okay? And she will take a position against one or the two parents that she is living with. Either she doesn't want to socialize with anybody, she feels ashamed to share anything with her friends because of privacy issues, and she doesn't want to be ashamed or shamed by anybody, or that she is too young to offer any help for either party. So talking with our children can draft them as enemies on the spot to both sides. And we don't win either by talking to our children or by abusing our children to vent. Some families, he is angry from his wife, but she is a strong personality, so he cannot curse her, he cannot abuse her, so he turns on the kids. And indirectly, he starts to abuse their mom. Your mom is, don't be like your mom, or don't be like your dad, right? So children can become victims of indirect shouting match between the two parents. And as such, they can also become a source of trouble in the family, whether it is their attitudes, our misunderstanding of their attitudes, the lack of joint policy and joint view about the kids. All of this can bring the children into a source of trouble. Excuse me?
There is a syndrome we call in medical parental alienation syndrome, like when parent turns to a kid.
Yes.
And there is a disease. It's not a disease, but it's a syndrome that causes exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Incompatibilities are very important, and I urge young potential prospects in the period of engagement to make sure that compatibility issues are discussed. What are your views about marriage? What are his views about marriage? What is your definition of family? What's his definition? What do you think your role is in the family vis-a-vis his role in the family? Where are the lines that neither one of you would cross? Okay? What is the degree of tolerance until each one adjusts their attitude to the new partnership? How much flexibility you need to pack, how much patience you need to pack going into the marriage from day one. Okay? So those incompatibilities, whether you are a spiritual person, he is a material person. Okay? He is mom's boy and you are independent. So you see, he's always asking his mom. It always gets on your nerve. Then you end up setting yourself as a competitive with his mom. It brings trouble. So you need to write down compatibilities. What do you exactly want in a husband or wife? And what are you willing to bring to this partnership of your own contributions? Okay? Focus on what is positive, but never ignore what is negative. So as you get married, there are issues that everybody has that says this is a no matter what, right? And there are issues that are tolerable, but only to a degree. And there are issues that are desirable. Define all of the above. I was talking to a sister, and she wanted me to be her wali. And I asked her, to be your wali, to negotiate with anybody on your behalf, I have to know, what are your limitations? What are the things that you would never accept? And she said, bad smelling feet. No way. So sometimes you couldn't expect what's in somebody else's head, right? So we have to discover and open and be transparent about things that are not going to be accepted at all. Whether it is attitudes, whether it is manners, whether it is hygiene, whether it is habits and customs, whether it is expectations. Somebody expects you to work and to chip 50% of your income in the family budget, and to cook, to clean, to raise children, to host his family on weekly basis. That's his expectations. He thinks you are strong enough to do it. And you're lazy if you don't. You need to discover what are his expectations. Okay? Now that I'm talking to people who are mostly married, you say, yeah, we went through this. But I'm talking to you knowing that you are already married, so that you teach your children how to get married. So I'm not talking exactly to you to review what you are going through yourself, but just to at least teach your kids how to navigate into marriage. Differing views, you think that it is very acceptable to do ABC, he thinks it's an abomination, right? How dare you do this? Because he is from Malaysia and you are from Slovenia and you met in Washington, right? So those views and judgments that we make about things need to be shared, because they are part of our compatibility process to adjust to each other. Okay? What makes you laugh may make him cry, right? What is painful for you is very normal for him. When he insults you, he calls it a joke. I was kidding, right? Or when he hugs another woman in front of you, he said, that's my culture, right? So you really need to know what exactly are you going to get in this closed package. In Egypt, we call marriage is like a fresh watermelon. You will never really know it until you open it. Before you open it, you don't know what you're getting. So differing views can also be a huge source of trouble in the family. I think I have turned you off enough. I'm sorry. But these are things that really influence family life, very frequently more than we think. Okay, let us see if we can move to some details. Poor skills. I don't know. We have like 7 minutes. Oh, do you want to take questions? We can take questions. I think this screen must have generated lots of questions. So go ahead.
I have a question.
Alaykum salam.
I heard a theory that expectations should be balanced in a family. Like you said, no one's 100% an angel or a devil. But do we ever compete for the same role in a family? So, like, if so, how do we inculcate positive qualities and characteristics evenly among the children? Say, for example, this son is an Islamic scholar, that son barely keeps up with his salat. This daughter always wears hijab, another daughter doesn't wear hijab at school or work. How do you balance these differences in a family?
Well, children attitude is not part of the expectations of the family. Children's attitudes are things that you need to unify your views with your husband's views regarding each son or daughter. Because they are different people. Even if you have a twin, they are two personalities. Okay? So what you need to do is to converge your views and your husband's views. You agree to some of his views, he agrees to some of your views, until you come up with a joint list. This son is stubborn, selfish, but generous in certain circumstances. He is not very spiritual, but he is very good at his study. So you define the pros and the cons, the positives and the negatives. So if you keep rewarding the positive in a child, then he grows them and he works to develop them further. If you keep tackling what is difficult by giving helps to the child to change, then he will use your assistance to change his attitude. Okay? If, for example, your child is not spiritual, he doesn't recognize the unseen altogether, that may be that he is immature. He doesn't have the imagination, because believing in the unseen takes some imagination. Okay? And it takes some knowledge that there are things that we do not see that not only exist, but they influence us.
And I have a question about the families, because I saw a family today, and the daughter wore hijab, but the mother did not wear hijab. And I was just wondering, is that common where the religiosity will skip a generation, or how do you reform the character, even like when you get older?
Yeah.
So can you say, okay, well now I see it's time for my daughter to wear hijab, shouldn't I?
It may be the daughter is wearing hijab because her father insists. So don't judge by the appearance. Okay? It may be that the father is religious, but the mother is not. And the daughter is convinced that the father is right, she wants to follow. Okay? Maybe another person in the family, like grandparents or someone, or aunts or anybody, they have influence on the child that is more apparent than the mother or the father. So you could never tell where the kids really pick from. Maybe she has a friend, her friend wore hijab, and she feels jealous and she wants to tell her friend, I'm not less than you. So there are varieties of reasons that could lead to that scene. Yeah. Okay. Any other question?
So you mentioned the problem with external interference, and you don't want to lose your privacy by, talking to
Sharing
the
your
center.
privacy.
Right.
Yes.
But then on the other hand, you said with your children as they get married, encourage them to tell you what's wrong.
To talk to.
As
Did I say this?
if something is going wrong, if they feel this.
Did I say they need to tell you what is wrong in their family?
You said encourage them to talk to you. Yeah.
No. Encourage them to open up to their husbands or to their wives, not to their parents. In fact, I raised the issue. I said, your parent doesn't know your spouse more than you do, if you remember.
That was with external interference, but I thought
No,
talked
to each other.
to each other. To each other. Okay.
To talk to each other as spouses. Yeah. Yes.
Spouse already talked to his parents.
Yes.
What is your role in that position? Like, what do you guys do?
If he talked to his parents,
Yeah.
what is your role in what? In what he says, or what's your role?
They come to you and
Or when your in-laws start to interfere because their son or daughter told them about things that they observe. Well, I believe if your relationship with them is respectful and they are wise people, I wouldn't mind engaging them. But if they are either too ignorant to contribute to the dispute or the resolution, and if I don't have positive relationship with them, I would try to close the discussion, withdraw, and take the issue with my husband or wife.
yeah, sometimes the husband refuses to involve his parents in his. Even you talk to him and
So
tell him, don't tell them.
you-
Keep doing that. Some husbands will keep doing that.
So he has this mommy daddy syndrome, right? And you are unable to stop him from doing it. I believe the failure, if I may, is when he leaves you as his closest intimate friend and decides to go out. That's a failure on both sides. It's a failure in the first place. The failure is when I don't trust my wife to work with me and I go out, it's a failure on my part. And when my wife fails to convince me that I can trust her and open up to her, and she's not going to be defensive, and she's not going to turn my words into attack or counterattack, then she also has failed to make herself my confidant, the person I can trust and I can talk to. So we need to examine. I like always to examine the issue from the root cause rather than dealing with the phenomenon from the tail end. Because things grow from a point to another point to another point. If I'm observant, I treat issues from its beginning rather than wait for them to grow and be full-blown and then they become out of control. The other issue I would like to also point to is in the beginning of marriage, there are people who are lucky enough to have in-laws that are loving and caring. They love you as they love their own children, and they embrace you as they embrace their children. There are other situations that in-laws are getting into the process of marriage when you are still not in full relationship with their child, and they want to control you, they want to embarrass you, they want to prove that you are not fit, that you are blessed to have their son or their daughter. Those attitudes show up sometimes from the beginning. The difficult one is, the difficult one is when they don't tell you or show you where they are. So sometimes you are their dearest and sometimes you are their enemy. Okay, inshallah, we'll finish next time. Jazakumullah khair.